Hello everybody, my name is Edwin Martinez Velasquez and this is my final presentation for Computer Engineering 557. Currently, I am a human-computer interaction student working on my master's degree. A little bit about my background. My undergrad was in computer engineering with a minor in computer science. A lot of my undergrad focused on game development, which also include graphical programming in OpenGL. On the right, you'll see a picture of me sailing with Pickle Rick by the Rickmobile. For the final project, I want to recreate a scene that I've built before in Unity, which is a game engine that already has pre-made shaders and physics engine. My scene is basically a sci-fi scene in space. It includes a skybox, which is a planet that has been destroyed. It's in the middle of space. There's going to be objects flying around, which are just asteroids. The asteroids are going to be loaded from pre-made OBJ files. For shaders, I'm going to be implementing what's called a physically based rendering shader, which is a very popular shader to make objects appear hyper-realistic. In addition to using the PBR shader, I will also be adding onto it a mission mapping and image-based lighting using diffuse radiance. Because my objects are already going to be lighted using image-based lighting, I'm only going to use a simple single point of light. However, because my asteroids has a emission mapping, I'm going to be animating the glow of those emissions to have a fade in, fade out effect. In addition to animating the emission glow from the asteroids, I'm also going to be rotating the asteroids in place. I'm not going to be translating them, just going to be using rotation matrix to make them spin in place. Lastly, I will be implementing FPS style navigation, which uses keyboard and mouse inputs. Because it is just a simple scene, the only thing the user can do is explore the scene using the FPS style navigation. The FPS style controls are simple. The keyboard controls are WASD keys, W is forward, S is backwards, A and D are strafing left and right. For the mouse controls, you will click and drag the left mouse button and it will control the pitch and yaw. The most challenging part of this final project was implementing the PBR shader using image-based lighting. To implement the shader, you need many texture maps. For my version of the PBR shader, I will be using albedo, normal, metallic, roughness, ambient occlusion, specular emissions, and irradiance maps. The reason this became a challenge is because I had to be able to load so many textures. I also had to generate a few of the textures that I didn't have. For example, ambient occlusion I did not have, and roughness map I did not have. Implementing the base shader for PBR shading was simple only because I found a pre-made one that takes in the albedo, normal, metallic, roughness, and ambient occlusion. However, I had to make small changes to also include specular mapping, emission mapping, and irradiance mapping. The hardest part of implementing the PBR shader after getting the base shader working was expanding it to do image-based lighting using the irradiance map. Basically what it is environmental mapping on top of PBR mapping inside the shader. So it takes the texture for the skybox and it diffuses it and blends it with the lighting to create a radiance map on top of the surface of the objects in which it's illuminating. Lastly, some finishing touches. I will be adding more asteroids, which should be just simple loading more OBJs. All these asteroids are going to be rotating in place. However, I'm going to try to make them to rotate in different directions. Then the source of light that I have, I want to try and make it orbit the scene to make it more dynamic. I will also try to add strafing navigation using right mouse click and drag, only because I find it annoying to explore the scene sometimes without it. And lastly, I'm just going to clean up the code. And here is a small demo of what I got so far. This is the demo of the scene that I've made, or at least the work I have so far. So for starters, if you look around, you'll see that We're surrounded in space. This is the effects of the skybox. The skybox is using a cube mapping, which is basically mapping 6 texture images to the inside of a cube. You notice I can never get away from the skybox. That's because the skybox is made to be in the same position and move along with my view model matrix or my view matrix. In this scene, I'm only rendering a single asteroid. The asteroid is using PBR shader with the IBL lighting. So it's combining several map texturing to generate the PBR effects. Part of the IBL lighting, a similar technique to environment mapping. So if I go on the side that's facing the planet, you can kind of see on the reflection of the asteroid's surface the lighting reflection of the planet. It is not a direct environment mapping, it's using irradiance mapping, so it kind of blurs the image a little bit and then combines it with the lighting and applies it to the surface of the object. If I go to the other side of the asteroid where this nebula is at, you will see the irradiance mapping here is a little bit different. Oh, I went inside the asteroid. From this angle, I'm currently drawing 2 sources of lights. One is a white light, the other is a somewhat red light. I was experimenting combining multiple lights. You will notice that the asteroid has a glowing blue light, that is the emission mapping. With the emission mapping, I'm basically just multiplying the texture, the vector 3 of a texture, with a float, and the float value is going from 0 to 25 and then 0 again. It is somewhat of a linear interpolation. Right now I have it so that it updates in incremental steps of 1 from 0 to 25 every 100 milliseconds. But then I have it that when it fades down to 0, to wait 1 full second before lighting back up. The end goal would be to add a couple more asteroids, maybe make the light sources orbit, improve the base camera so I can strafe up and down, not just left and right. And that is it for my scene. Thank you.